Hello, everybody. This is Precious D. Welcome to our bonus episode for Godzilla King of Monsters. I just wanted to apologize. There are some sound issues in this episode. It just drops out in a few places. So I hope that won't interfere too much with your enjoyment. Thank you. Hello, welcome to Monster Movie Fun Time Go. I am Precious D.
And I am Honey Bee.
I would particularly like to welcome all our international listeners, all
Hello.
4 or 5 of them. We appear to have 2 listeners in Germany, one in the UK, one in India, and one in Israel.
Amazing.
They have stuck with us for more than one episode.
Well, I hope that you have, even if you aren't from any of those places, welcome back. We're
But
so happy to have all of you.
please send us an email telling us where you're from and how you found out about us. We are at monstermoviefuntimego@gmail.com, or you can go to anchor.fm/mmftg and leave us a voice message there. Honeybee, I saw The Suicide Squad this week.
Did you?
Not to be confused with Suicide Squad. This was The Suicide Squad.
Yes, it's the second movie, isn't it?
Yes, I bring that up because there's a kaiju in it.
Oh.
Something from the comic books. I was very excited. I knew from the previews that it was there.
Okay, I have not seen it.
It's on the HBO. You should have access to it.
Cool.
So today we're just doing a little bonus episode where we will discuss the Americanization of Godzilla, titled Godzilla King of Monsters.
Please explain this to me a little bit. Like, why was it just that the Japanese film wasn't available at all? Like, we just couldn't.
They got the rights to it, but
Mm-hmm.
instead of just dubbing it, they decided that foreign films were not that popular or Americans couldn't identify with foreigners or something. So they decided they needed to put some American interest directly into the movie.
Yeah.
So they added scenes with Raymond Burr,
Mm-hmm.
who would go on to become quite well known just a year later, playing Perry Mason and then later Ironsides. And they only had him for one day. He spent a 24-hour shift filming all of his scenes.
No way.
The dubbing, and they didn't dub everything. Some of the scenes they just had him narrate or had his friend translate. But the dubbing they recorded in 5 hours.
Oh, wow.
They had several voice actors, and they apparently just had everybody record all the lines and then just had each person record all the lines and then just pick and choose which reading they liked best. One of the people,
oh my gosh.
One of the dubbers was James Hong, a Chinese American actor, not Japanese. Apparently, he says there were Japanese actors there. They must have just liked his versatility the most. James Hong is famous Chinese American character actor. You've seen him in things.
I believe that.
He's the bad guy in Big Trouble in Little China, and he's just in numerous movies and TV shows. If you saw his face, you would know him. So all the new footage was done in 3 days, and all of Raymond Burr's stuff done in one of those 3 days.
Wow.
They removed any overt references to the bomb tests, radioactive tuna, or anything like that. It says here the budget was $125,000 and the box office was $2 million.
Wow.
This was released in 1956, a few years after the original. Black and white, 80 minutes, cut down from 96 minutes. Directed by Terry O. Morse, and of course, Ishiro Honda directing the original material.
Well,
and then they would do this again 30 years later. In 1984, Toho rebooted the Godzilla franchise. They did this thing where they make a sequel that ignores all the previous sequels. So it was a sequel. It was called, I think, both Godzilla 1984 and Godzilla Returns. It was meant to be a sequel to the original movie, but ignoring all the previous sequels. Similar things have happened recently with like Halloween and,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Terminator. So America decided to do the same thing and release Godzilla 1985 with new footage starring Raymond Burr again inserted into the film. Raymond Burr, who by this time didn't have to take this job, but maybe he had some warm feelings about the project. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure.
Maybe he thought, well, better me than somebody else. Can't let somebody else do that crap. So they did a little, obviously a little editing because they put things in and took things out, but they did some rearranging too.
Hmm.
The movie starts off a little differently. We don't have any music or booms. I think we have a little bit of roar and some glowing water.
Yes. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then Raymond Burr, whose character's name is.
Steve Martin?
Yes, yes. Of course, the comedian Steve Martin was not known at the time, so it's
Of
just,
course.
just a coincidence.
Yeah.
This reporter is
Still,
not a
LOL.
wild and crazy guy. He is just a sober, normal guy.
It makes way more sense that this happened in like a few hours or like a day because I didn't like it. I didn't. I
Well,
mean,
somebody must have, because this was what we got for 50 years until they.
yeah. I mean, totally.
I
I'm
mean,
I'm glad I
most
saw the other one first.
yeah, I guess if you didn't have anything else to compare it to, you
Right, of
know,
course.
okay. But this was the version that most of the world saw outside of Japan for 50 years.
That's crazy. For anyone who, this was their first Godzilla experience and you're in love with it, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry.
So we start with Steve Martin saying, "This is Tokyo, and the city is already in rubble." Steve is laying in the rubble, covered up with a something.
Hmm.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Building.
Beam. I thought beam. He's covered port beam or something, laying in the rubble. He's saying it in voiceover that it was once a city of 6 million, now only a few. And then we flash back, and Steve was just stopping over in. I wasn't even supposed to be here today. He was on his way to
Mhm.
Cairo and just stopped for a social call to his friend Shirazawa. And we see him in the triage center, and Emiko has her thing with the dead mother. Steve is carried
Mhm.
in. I think he mentions the odor of scorched flesh. And then we get the first of a
Yeesh.
few scenes where Raymond Burr talks to a body double of,
Mhm.
of one of the original. So we just see the back of Emiko's.
Right.
We get a shot over her shoulder at Steve as he pretends to talk to her, and then a reverse shot of the actress. We get a flashback to him on the airplane and talking about how Dr. Saragawa is his old college friend. And then we get the ship attack that opens the original.
The original movie. Yeah. Yes.
And then,
I thought too when there is actual spoken Japanese happening,
mhm.
there's no subtitles.
Yeah, I noticed that also. That was a little odd.
That is odd.
There's a few times when it just goes on for a few, no translation. And then
Yeah.
Steve turns to this guy and says, what are they saying? And he tells us. But then there's other places where it's dubbed. And here we get the opposite of what we usually get. Usually there are people who should be speaking good English who are
Mhm.
not, like in King Kong, people
Mhm.
speaking broken English. Here we have all of these Japanese people who live in Japan and yet speak flawless English with no discernible
No
accent.
accent.
And I don't just mean the dubbed people, but this guy that he's about to meet at the airport
Right.
is obviously a Japanese American native English speaker.
There were a few times also that where it was dubbed and it felt like the person was trying a little hard to have an accent.
Oh, okay. I don't think I noticed those. I wonder if that was James Hong. So
I'm not sure, but I have it written down. I'll let you know when it happens.
after the ship is attacked, there's stock plane footage, and Steve comes to the airport, and Shigeo Ito, assistant to Dr. Sarazawa, meets him, but then he is asked to come to the security office for questioning. There we meet Tomo Iwanaga, who's the guy that speaks perfect English. He has some kind of uniform, but there's no insignia on it at all. And he is some kind of security officer who then hangs around with Steve for most of the rest of the movie, just translating for him because he doesn't have official duties he should be doing instead. And Steve works for United World News. Apparently, they want to talk to him. They're talking to everybody on the flight because they think they might have seen the ship get attacked. But I don't think he actually has any information.
Right.
And then there's something here about a ship wiped out by a blinding flash of light. That might be the ship they're questioning about them. And then we get one of these scenes where they're in the chart room and everybody's talking in Japanese. And this is a scene from the original movie. I have to say, I think they did a good job of matching the rooms. So it does seem like Steve is in the room he's supposed to be in.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that they did do a good job with that.
If I didn't know, I don't think I would have spotted it.
Yeah, it feels like the quality of like when it's showing Steve is like a little bit better,
Okay.
just by a little bit. When it's the other footage, it just is like a little bit more foggy.
Okay.
Blurry, I guess is a better word.
All right. So then, yeah, there's a scene from the original movie about a rescue ship, and we see the ship catch fire. And we go to a room full of international reporters where Steve calls in the story to an operator. It doesn't sound like maybe he's dictating a telegram because it doesn't.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like he's actually talking to his editor.
Right.
And we get the families coming in wanting news and finding survivors that then die in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, which the narrator tells us we don't actually see that like from the first film.
Right.
He just tells us that they die in seconds, and we see the concerned people. And then the next thing I have written down is, if you heard this in the last episode, that joint in the old man's hand still looks like a joint.
I have next that demand results meeting with Yamane, Dr. Yamane, and Steve claims to have met him years ago through Sarazawa, so that we just feel like Steve's connected to what's going on. And then we see the scene with them. That would be the old man, the Masaji being found, and the narrator makes it seem like he died. Although even in the original, it's not clear right away that he's not dead because they're sure acting like he's dead.
Yeah, but then you see him.
Yes, we see that in the original he survived. He washes up on the beach. He survived, but then gets killed in the next scene. Steve mentions a helicopter.
I also said that. Yes, a helicopter.
Maybe they were still, the general public didn't really know what they were yet, like everybody now does. I don't know. I don't know why he called it a helicopter. I mean, there's a scene in Casablanca where Humphrey Bogart mispronounces bourbon. And
Weird.
He was not a teetotaler, but apparently bourbon was not a well-known drink at that time. So he calls it bourbon or something. Bourbon. Steve, Tomo, and Steve's pipe talk to a guy who saw the monster. And Steve makes a slightly racist comment, I feel.
Yeah, I also feel. Are you talking about the sake comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
He says the guy must have had too much sake.
Yeah.
Not just alcohol. It had to be. It just seemed like slightly racist thing to say. And we haven't been rating these movies like we said we were gonna on the racism factor.
Oh, you're right.
But I'm gonna give that half a point on this one.
We're good. Half a star.
Yeah, and our previous, not previous, 2 movies ago, Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. It gets a 1 because it just exists in a world where there's no non-white people.
Right.
And Godzilla, I mean, Japanese society is pretty homogenous at that time, probably, and still is, I think.
Yeah.
Certainly no non-Japanese people in that movie. So maybe we want to give it a one for that. I don't know. I'm not going to judge a foreign film as harshly as judge my own
Right,
culture.
of course. Yeah, definitely. I don't know. This film, it's hard for me to I was confused with this film. I guess this is my first experience where like this is a thing. I've never seen anything like this before, but I was just like it felt like, are we stupid? Like we couldn't read the subtitles? Like I don't know. It was just
It
weird.
it is an unusual way to. Well, the subtitles would emphasize that it's a foreign film, I guess, and people don't like to read subtitles. And maybe that's their perception of why foreign films aren't popular is because of the subtitles. So
Yeah.
just cut it out. Yeah, it's a weird way to go about it. So then we see the scene with the dancing,
The
and
ceremony, yeah, the ritual.
Tomo explains the legend and the girl's sacrifice while we watch the dance. And I wrote down, what is the name of the monster? Godzilla. I'm not at all clear why they felt the need in the first place to change the name from Gojira to Godzilla.
Hmm.
I guess Godzilla has a lizard sound to it. I don't know. I don't know whose idea that was. I don't feel it's necessary.
Yeah, same.
So then it's the nighttime and the storm with the Godzilla attack, and Steve and Tomo are just camping out in a tent.
Hmm.
And we cut Steve in with the original footage of the building getting trashed, but we don't actually see Godzilla.
I have right here, I just want to say this is where I have written down, wow, this is crazy. Oh no, dubbed in an accent? Question mark.
Okay, I'm not sure who
So
that.
yeah, me either. Yeah, dang. I guess it's like around the ritual, like somewhere in the ritual maybe.
Okay.
I'll have to go back and look.
So Steve tells us no one was sure except the natives. The natives are
Hmm.
all sure it's Godzilla that did it. They said it was Godzilla. Then we get that meeting where everybody's putting in their insurance claims, but Steve's narration changes the meaning of their testimony. And I can't remember what he changes it to, but it seems to be less about the damages that they suffered.
Hmm.
And Yamane talks about Yetis again and suggests a research party. And he's being dubbed in this scene, and the dubber, maybe that's who you were saying had an accent.
Maybe so.
He keeps mispronouncing phenomena.
Maybe that's what it was. Phenomena.
Do 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 do
Phenomena.
do do
Phenomena.
do 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 do. Steve talks to Yamane's body double and wants to come on the research mission and get the Bon Voyage scene. And Steve's intercutting there with his unlit pipe. He just has an oral fixation. It's always in his mouth. He actually does light the pipe and rats out Emiko and what's his name?
Ogato.
Ogato.
Ogata.
Yeah, in his narration he rats them out. But
He
it was
says
classic.
it was the usual triangle. Like what?
All right.
I love that. It was the usual triangle. Wait a second.
And then we get all the Geiger counter and measuring the footprints in the trilobite with little shots of Steve cutting all of that. And Steve starts to ask about the trilobite, but then gets cut off as everybody has to go run and hide. And at 28 minutes and 30 seconds, Godzilla finally appears, contrasted with 22 minutes and 8 seconds in the original. Tomo falls down, Emiko falls down. And I don't know if these guys were in the original. I don't think they were. There's some guys holding swords like they're ready to fight Godzilla.
Oh, really?
There's swords. Yeah. And here they claim Godzilla is 400 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
The American producer up the size of Godzilla without actually doing anything to jack up his size.
Right. Yeah, I also want to say the photo of when they're saying like judging from this photograph he's over 400 feet tall, it looks like an elementary school day photo where it's like, okay, now tilt your head down a little bit, look up, great, snap. Yeah. The way,
Make a little fist, put his chin on the fist.
yeah. It's like the way that his head is like tilted. It was very like it was like an elementary school photo. It was really funny.
Uh, so Yamane seems to theorize both that Godzilla was reproducing secretly and that the H bomb resurrected it. And the crowd starts to get angry, but it's not clear. In the original, it was clear what they were getting angry. In this one, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
They were having an argument about whether or not to keep it secret, but in this one, they just seemed to get mad. And then Steve calls George back home at the paper, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Calls the monster big and terrible. There's some stuff about depth. Oh, he tells them they're going to use depth bombs. Then we get a really bad scene where Steve calls Serizawa.
Yeah.
His body double on the phone is placed behind lab equipment so that his face is obscured.
Yeah, and he's just not the same character. I feel like with the
Uh-huh.
it just really took away from his character. Like I felt like in the original movie his character was very kind of mysterious, maybe a little,
Mm-hmm.
just different. And with the American voiceover, it was just like, nah, it's like not the same guy. Or like the
No,
same character. It doesn't feel the
no.
same at all.
I did feel though, in a way though, he's more mysterious in that Steve has come to see him and doesn't. He keeps talking about him, but never gets to meet him like until the end when they're on the boat together, but they don't interact at all. This phone, this fake phone call is their only direct interaction, and Serizawa makes fun of Steve's Japanese. I guess he's like, I speak perfect English. Why Japanese? As
Yeah.
he's hiding behind the lab equipment. Can't meet tonight. Emiko is coming and do solid and tell him that his woman is cheating on him. I already know this, but he narrates about it. And Emiko calls him Dr. Serizawa, which I thought was oddly formal. That things are not going well
A
with
doctor.
you and your fiance, unless you're in a Jane Austen novel. If your
Aww.
fiance always refers to you by your title, maybe there's a problem.
Or maybe it's a kinky thing. Don't kink shame them.
But she starts her off, and it didn't play this way in the original, but in this one, it kind of plays like maybe he cut purpose
Mm-hmm.
because he knows and doesn't want her to tell him. And then this scene plays out pretty much the way it does in the original. Then she goes to Ogata, out with the boy, but that character just gets pushed to the side. The boy that gets adopted, whose brother died,
Mm-hmm.
he's not at all a proper character in this movie. That nobody talks about him. It's not clear who he is or anything.
Yeah.
The three young people are watching the depth charges on TV as Yamane broods like he did in the original.
Uh-huh.
But in this version, the party ship is explicitly celebrating Godzilla's presumed destruction. They're just celebrating too soon.
Right.
Whereas in the other one, it just seemed like they were just dumbasses who
Yeah. Yeah.
weren't paying attention. What is this I wrote? Panic newspaper? Paris newspaper? I don't know. Oh, and I don't know. Something about the newspaper, and then the military rolls in. And we finally get to hear some Godzilla music. And the family time is interrupted by klaxons and thuds as G attacks and eats the train with Steve intercut. And there's an untranslated meeting. And Tomo explains the electric tower plan to Steve. And there's some evacuations. And the little girl who was crying in the beginning is seen evacuating in this scene. But because this is all a flashback, this would have happened before that. And the night news office has a good view.
That's a good.
Steve makes a recording for George, and Godzilla comes ashore. Max towers. Army shoots as per original. We see his atomic breath. Steve watches. Smash, smash, cut to Steve, smash. That's what I wrote. And we see Steve.
I do love the again, like the toys smashing and I just love that. It's so brilliant.
uh, Steve says some of that other reporter, the guy in the tower, said in the original, and we see the tower go. But I don't think in this one it's clear that there's people on that tower.
Mm.
And nothing can save the city now. Steve signs off as the building is hit. We get the mother with her children again, but no
Yeah,
translation.
but we don't know what she's saying, so it's not as
Right.
devastating, which is funny if you grew up with this version and then later watch the original version, you're like, oh God.
But Godzilla does a bridge flip. There's an airstrike, and Godzilla leaves. And now we're back to where we came in with Steve bandaged and, in quotes, talking
Mm.
to Emiko and Ogata. And Emiko tells Steve about the oxygen destroyer. And we get the flashback to a shorter version of that scene. Steve wants to talk to Serizawa, but Emiko and Ogata go see him so that we don't have to reshoot anything.
Yeah. And in this scene, at one point where they're talking to Sarazawa, it sounds like she says the Zilla instead of like she's like saying something, and I had to stop it and rewind it because it really sounded like she said the Zilla. And I was like, oh
Zilla.
dang, the Zilla.
What people like to call the 1998 American Zilla.
Oh really?
That's a Broderick one.
That,
Yeah,
that's
they
funny.
actually they end up incorporating that version of the monster into some of the Japanese movies to make it very clear that it's a separate monster.
Hmm.
That our guy is Gojira and that guy is just Zilla.
The Zilla.
Yeah. We get the same scene with the love triangle, but Emiko mentions Steve in passing just to keep him as part of the story.
Right,
They have a
yeah.
little. The TV footage different though? To me, it seemed like
I think it is.
I think in the original we just see them singing the prayer for peace, and in this one we see
Yeah.
some destruction, and then we see the
Hmm.
girls singing.
Yeah.
We get a shorter version of the oxygen destroyer on the boat preparation scene as Steve watches and narrates. Some other news guy does some commentary,
Hmm.
and I feel like Saragawa's motivation for sacrificing himself is less clear in this version.
Agreed. Yeah,
The,
agreed.
the whole idea that I must take this secret with me is less
Hmm.
clear in this version.
Yeah, I felt like it was a little lost.
And the other says, people of the world, Godzilla is dead. Give us strength to rebuild our beloved land. Yes, this is meant to be a Japanese reporter who's talking in English. And then Steve says in narration, the menace was gone, so was a great man, but the whole world could wake up and live again.
Hmm.
And over the closing credits, we hear the prayer for peace slowly drowned out by booming footsteps. Because we've cut out all references to bombs and tests and things, we
Hmm.
don't get the if these tests continue, he might come back. Or there might be another one. I just don't think they're focusing as much on how this is our fault.
Right. Which, I mean, of course. Of course
America's
not.
not going to take responsibility.
Wouldn't be as great of a movie. I mean, they if they were going to do that, they would have just dubbed it.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't going to, so they made this
Yeah.
monstrosity.
Yeah. So that is Godzilla, King of Monsters! Exclamation point from
Exclamation
1950.
point. So is this your first this was your first Godzilla, right?
I don't think so. I don't think I
Oh,
saw this
okay.
one until years later. I must have seen some on television. I remember once going to the drive-in to see some other movie and there being a preview of Godzilla versus Megalon
Mm,
and wanting to see that, but
excuse me.
did not go. I did not go see it in the movie theater though.
Boo.
But I remember thinking that looked cool. But no, I think I just caught random ones on television. Usually ones where he's fighting with somebody,
Okay.
which he does do until his second movie.
Yay. Is that the raids again?
Yes, again,
Nice.
not rides again. If he were a cowboy, he would ride again. He's He is a monster, so his rating again.
He is a monster, not a cowboy. Noted.
Yeah, little mini episode just covering the Americanization of Godzilla.
Yeah, if you've
And
only seen this version of Godzilla, do yourself a favor and watch the other one, the
yeah,
Japanese version.
both versions are on HBO Max right now, along with several other Godzilla and Godzilla related movies like Rodan and Mothra.
There's so many. I looked them up today, all of them. Like, just typed into Google like every Godzilla movie ever made, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many.
Yeah, it's about 25, I think. But then
Yeah,
there's also, like I said, Rodan and Mothra, who have their own movies before they fight Godzilla. And then Mothra's got like at least three movies of her own years later. So we'll get to all of that.
Woo!
So thanks for joining us. And we'll be doing this will probably just be a bonus episode, and we will do them exclamation point next time on Monster Movie Fun Time Go.